Good morning. We are going to talk about the Bhopal disaster. Our team is made up by Ernesto Eduardo Hernández López, Diego Octavio Jiménez Robles, and me, Sebastián Otoniel Sánchez Méndez. So let's start with the facts. On December 3 of 1984, in Bhopal, India, about 45 tons of dangerous gas methyl isocyanate escaped from an insecticide plant that was owned by the Indian subsidiary of the American firm Union Carbide Corporation. The gas drifted over the densely populated neighborhoods around the plant, killing thousands of people immediately and creating a panic as tens of thousands of others attempted to flee Bhopal. At 11 p.m. on December 2 of 1984, an operator at the plant noticed a small leak of methyl isocyanate (MIC) gas that was increasing pressure inside a storage tank. The vent gas scrubber, a safety device designed to neutralize toxic discharge from the MIC system, had been thrown off 3 weeks prior. Apparently, a faulty valve had allowed 1,000 liters of water for cleaning internal pipes to mix with 40 tons of MIC. A 30-ton refrigeration unit that was normally used and served as a safety component to cool the MIC storage tank had been drained of its coolant for use in another part of the plant. Pressure and heat from the vigorous exothermic reaction in the tank continued to build. The gas flare system was out of action and had been for 3 months. At around 1 a.m. December 3, loud rumbling reverberated around the plant as a safety valve gave way, sending a plume of MIC gas into the air.
Causes. In 1984, the plant was manufacturing 7 at 1/4 of its production capacity to decrease demand for pesticides. Widespread crop failures in the 1980s led to the increased indebtedness and decreased capital for farmers to invest in pesticides. Local managers directed to close the plant and prepare it to sell in July 1984 to decrease profitability. As there were no buyers, they made plans to dismantle key production units of the facility for shipment to another developing country. While that was happening, they continued operating with very low safety and pollution standards. Government do anything because of economic consequences that losing such a large employer will have. Effects on third parties. The final death toll was estimated to be between 50,000 and 20,000. Some of a half million survivors suffer respiratory problems, irritation, or blindness, and another maladies resulting from exposure to the toxic gas. A private study in India found lead and mercury in milk of nursing mothers in community near the plant. In the early 21st century, more than 400 tons of industrial waste were still present on the site. Despite continued protests and attempts at litigation, neither the Dow Chemical Company, which bought out of the Union Carbide Corporation in 2001, nor the Indian government has properly cleaned the site. Soil and water contamination in the area was blamed for chronic health problems and high instances of birth defects in the area inhabitants.
There were a lot of consequences surrounding this terrible accident, but we are going to present now some of the most important ones. Later on in the timeline, we're going to show you some more. So the first big consequences came in 1989, when the Indian government and Union Carbide strike an out-of-court deal of a compensation of 470 million US dollars was given by Union Carbide. Then, in 2004, the Indian Supreme Court ordered the state to supply clean drinking water to the residents of Bhopal because the groundwater was contaminated. In the same year, the Indian Supreme Court ordered the central bank to pay out more than 50 billion rupees to the victims of the disaster because part of the $470 million received in 1989 were kept in a dollar account since 1992. And finally, in 2010, several former executives of Union Carbide's Indian subsidiary, all Indian citizens, were convicted by a Bhopal court of negligence in the disaster.
And well, this is the timeline of the facts that occurred during this disaster. At first, in 1924, Union Carbide opened its first plant in India. It was a battery assembly plant near Calcutta. In 1969, UCIL plant in Bhopal begins operating, formulating pesticides from chemicals imported from the US. In 1981, a plant operator in the Bhopal plant, Ashraf, was killed by a phosgene gas leak. In 1982, the phosgene gas leak severely injured 28 workers. In 1982, the Business Confidential Safety Audit conducted by a US team in May 1982 identified 61 hazards, 30 of them major and 11 in the dangerous phosgene MIC units.
December 3rd, 1984. Methyl isocyanate gas leaks from a Bhopal plant. According to Bhopal People Health and Documentation Clinic, 8,000 people perished in immediate aftermath. December 4th, 1984. Union Carbide chairman Warren Anderson is among 9 people arrested by Indian police during a visit to the factory. He is freed on $2,000 bail and leaves India. Union Carbide is named as the 10th accused in criminal case charging culpable homicide. February 1985. Indian government filed claims for $3.3 billion from Union Carbide in U.S. court. May 1986. Judge Keenan sends case back to the Indian court. February 1989. The Indian government and Union Carbide strike out of court deal and compensation of $470 million is given by Union Carbide.
Then in 1992, part of the 470 million US dollars were disbursed. Disbursed means payout by the government among the Bhopal gas victims. It's really important to see the keyword part of the 470 million dollars. We will later on see what happened to the other part. Later in 2004, the Indian Supreme Court ordered the state to supply clean drinking water to the residents of Bhopal because the groundwater was contaminated. And in the same year, in July 19, the Indian Supreme Court ordered the central bank to pay out more than 50 billion rupees, part of the original $470 million, received as compensation that were kept in a dollar account in 1992. So now we get to see what happened to the other part of the 470 million US dollars. And then in October 26, 2004, the Indian Supreme Court set a deadline of November 15 to pay this compensation. And in the same year, the authorities begin to distribute this compensation to the relatives of the Bhopal gas victims. And then in 2010, several former executives of Union Carbide's Indian subsidiary, all Indian citizens, were convicted by a Bhopal court of negligence in the disaster. Well, to end the presentation, we wanted to show a little timeline that presents the most important events surrounding one of the key figures in this accident, Warren Anderson, who was the chairman of Union Carbide during the time of the accident. We're going to see if he ever faced the consequences, because for many people he's the indirect responsible of the accident and should have faced some consequences. So we start in December 4th, 1984, the day after the disaster, when Warren Anderson was among other 9 people who were arrested by the Indian police during a visit to the factory. He was freed on a bail of 2,000 US dollars, and he lived in India. Then in 1992, Anderson was declared fugitive from the law for ignoring court summons. Then in 2002, the Bhopal gas victim survivors launched protests in New Delhi when they heard that the Indian government was planning to drop charges against Anderson. Then in 2003, the Indian government sent a formal request for extradition on Anderson of the United States. Then in June 2004, the US rejected the Indian request for extradition, saying that the request does not met with requirements of certain provisions of the bilateral extradition treaty. And finally, more than 10 years later, Anderson died at a nursing home in Vero Beach, Florida. He was 92, and he never really faced the consequences for this disaster. Um, in one of the photos here, we can see some protesters with a sign that says, "You want Osama, give us Anderson." This really struck me because driving like connection between Osama bin Laden and Warren Anderson, I don't know. Of course, the two accidents they were involved were completely different. One was planned, the other one wasn't. But for some people, Anderson was as guilty as Osama. So maybe he was after all. I don't know. I really don't know. But that will be all. Thank you for listening and goodbye.